Hey, it's been a while, I know. Y'all know how life is. I still love y'all. So I'm coming to you today because I'm going to pick back up on my YouTube channel, talk about things scripture, because that just seems to be the overarching thing in my life right now is studying scripture, understanding scripture, and spreading word. So I'm going to be posting a lot more about scripture, and I'm not a pastor, rabbi, Moshe, any of those things. But I am a believer in the Messiah, and I do believe that we are to be fishers of men, which means that we have to spread his word. That's what he told us to do. Make sure that we understand things, and not just that. Let's have an open discussion because a lot of people that I speak to don't understand some things that they read, or they have never heard some things before. And so I'm like, do you read your scripture outside of going to church and just hearing what the pastor gives you every Sunday? Because there's a lot to the words. So I don't know how people aren't getting some things, but what I want to do is make it interactive and bring scripture to people, and also give them someone to come back to, like a virtual Bible study is what it can be looked at. So I'm going to be starting from Genesis. I'm going to tell people right now I do not read from a King James version of the Bible, even though what you hear from me speak about will be in your King James. Some of it. But I, being Hebrew, read from something called a Sefer. It's a Hebrew Bible. And the Sefer, the Torah, has everything that the Catholic Church and the Christian Church removed. The Book of Enoch, Jubilees, Maccabees, things like that. I think the Catholic canon has Maccabees and a few other books in it, but they don't have everything. So anyway, I'm going to start with Genesis. You'll find a lot of this in Genesis yourself. Just to go over some things that I think people overlook, because in the beginning they're just like, oh, in the beginning there was light, and these are the days that he created it. If you hear pitter patter, it's the puppies. They're up and down the stairs. Okay, so 2 minutes have gone by. We're gonna jump in. I'm not going to be before you long. Isn't that what the pastors like to say in church? I'm not going to be before you long. So we're going to go over, I think, like 7 scriptures really quickly if you want to jump into Genesis chapter 1. So the first scripture that jumped out at me that I wanted to just go over was, he said, and Elohim said, let there be light, and there was light. So I think that this is the first time we really see power of the tongue. Remember in Proverbs 18:21, he says, life and death is in the power of the tongue, and he who loves it shall eat its fruits. And I think right here, the Father has already said, going down some, let us create man in his image. That means we're doing things, we're doing things the way that the Father does things, and the Father creates by speaking. What he says, the power of his tongue, it comes to pass. He eats the fruit of that. It's the same thing with us. So right here, he spoke a command, let there be light, and what happened? There was light. The same with us. What we speak, we put out there, and there's power in our words. It will come to pass at some point. Stone. And so we want to definitely be mindful of that. So that's the first instance where he showed us power of the tongue. The second one I wanted to jump to is Genesis 5. And in Genesis 5, it said, and Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And that was important to me because it shows that there's a separation between light and day, day and night, and between light and dark. And then going further into it, good and bad. There needs to be a separation. The two cannot be together. And we hear that throughout scripture more and more, that you can't have a forked tongue. You don't need to mix company. You have to be in the world but not of it. So he talks about separation between those who are his seed, and the seed of the world, the seed of the enemy, the devil, Satan, however you identify the opposition to the Father and his kingdom. So this is showing you the first separation he's showing you between good and bad, light and day. He separated it. And don't forget, the Father speaks in a lot of parables to help us understand lessons. So even when something is straightforward and literal, also look at his parable that could be in there with the message as well. The second one is Genesis 9. And on Genesis 9, it says, and Elohim said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place. let the waters be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. So we remember a little later on Noah and the ark occur, and the landscape of the earth is changed because the whole earth was flooded. So prior to the flood, the waters were gathered into one place and land appeared. So it seems to be there was one landmass. Remember, scientifically, we like to look at this as Pangea. So what this tells us is, I hope that's the way it's pronounced, Pangea. So what this tells us is there were one people. When man finally came, we already know it was one man, and all man came from him. So it's that one common ancestor that all man has in that one geographical area, because it was one landmass. After that, we have Genesis 16. Genesis 1, verse 16. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, govern. Where am I? And the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So this tells us right here the word rule, to govern, to have authority over. We look at the sun, we look at the moon, we look at the stars. Some people worship them. I'm not going to say to go that far. But what he does tell us is that he has these heavenly hosts, these heavenly bodies that have authority. They're just not inanimate objects. They actually are alive, and he has given them a role to play. They are in charge of the heavens. They are in charge of their respective parts of the day, and they have a function. And I just think that that's beautiful. We will see more of this in the book of Enoch, which is not in your King James Version, but Enoch is mentioned in your King James Version, and you should be really curious about him because it's a phenomenal book, and I would implore you to purchase a Sefer so that you could get that book and read up on him in detail. It's really amazing. Genesis 22, it states, and Elohim blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. Now, just to give you some context, this is after he created all the creatures of the sea and of the air, basically. So this is still before Adam. And what happens here is, I want you guys to realize he gave his first command to his creation. He says, be fruitful and multiply. And again, this was before man came. So the Father's intention for all of his creation is to be fruitful and to multiply. He wants us to thrive. So population control is not man's right. The Father is in charge of all of that. It is not up to man to say there are too many of this species, there are too many of this species, there are too many people, so we're going to create some government conspiracy or some biological warfare, whatever happens. That's not man's place. The Father has told us from the beginning of time, he wants us to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? The next one we're going to do, and this is the second to the last one, is Genesis 27. So in Genesis 27, he says, so Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created him, male and female created he them. That's in the King James Version. If you look at Genesis 27, it says he created man, male and female. It's interesting to me because he has not yet mentioned the creation of Yahuwah, or as Christians call her, Eve. He's not mentioned her creation yet, but he has mentioned creating man, both male and female. So if we want to look at that in a linear or chronological order, seeing as it's before he mentions Eve's creation, does that mean that there were humans created first before he created Eve, but something was just different or special about the creation of Adam and Yahuwah themselves that he separated their mentioning? I just find that so interesting, and I want that to be something open for conversation. I'm not going to say debate. I'm going to say conversation, because you have to read the entire word in context to really put pieces together and understand. So what do you think? because that is before the mention of Eve. The last one I wanted to get into with you guys is Genesis 29. And this is one of my favorite things to point out. He says, and Elohim said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, and which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. We have our diet laid out for us right in the beginning. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to say that I don't eat meat. I'm not going to say that. But what I'm saying to you is we serve a perfect Adonai. We serve a perfect Elohim. His ways are what's best for us. He engineered our bodies. He gave us a vegan diet. From the beginning, he told us this is what you are to eat. I made your body. I made you from the earth. And because I made you from the earth, you're to eat of the earth. Plants and fruits, those things are living. And when I say they're living, they have their seed in them. So if you take a fruit and you eat of it and you plant a seed, you're going to harvest that crop again. It's living. And so life begets life. Now, when we eat meat, we can't replant a bone and a cow is going to come back out. We can't, plant chicken bones and the chicken is going to come back. That thing is dead. And once you know about meat and how heavy it makes your body and how long it takes to digest, our Father is gracious. He's merciful. Once we started eating meat, our bodies were able to handle it, but we don't operate as efficiently as we would if we went to our original scriptural diet. If you think about an animal, once it's killed, the decaying process starts, and then they have to inject it with the chemicals to keep it looking fresh, which is deceptive. So in fact, we're eating a decaying carcass. By the time it gets to the butcher and to the grocery stores, how long has that thing been dead? And then you're putting something dead into your body. So death begets death. That's why we're not as healthy as we would be. And I know there's a lot of arguments against it, but I'm just going by scripture. I will never argue with what the Father says. I will say I'm disobedient. I will say I'm selfish. I will say I give way to my flesh before I want to argue the Father and say, oh, the Father is wrong, or the Father. No, he's just merciful, and he knows that we're foolish, and he knows that we're disobedient, and we're going to eat what we want to eat and live how we want to live. So he allows our bodies to just handle it, but it's not as optimal as it would be if we live the way he wanted to live. And that's why you see a lot on Facebook and stuff, these vegans who have amazing bodies and who live so long and they're doing so well. So anyway, long story short, the Father wants us to eat from the earth. We came from the earth, and the earth will provide what's best for us. All these genetically modified things, they don't come from the earth. And it also says in the scripture, fruit that has its seed in it. And so seedless fruits, what is that? Don't ever expect to have the same benefit from a seedless fruit that you would have from a seeded fruit, because it's not the same. And I was wondering, how come it's all these scientific things that says the benefits of a blueberry, the benefits of an orange, the benefits of this, but we will consume these things and not experience the healing powers that these properties are supposed to have. And it's because we do not have these authentic fruits anymore, these authentic vegetables. They're not the same. They're not the same that they were in the beginning, because we've polluted the earth, we've polluted the soil, we've GMO'd the seeds. It's just horrible. And so that's why we're not healthy and we're not healing through food. Let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. It's not working that way for us because we're not really getting the real deal. Anywho, I will be doing this again, maybe next week on Saturday. I'm going to do it again with you guys. I'll go into Genesis 2. I'm going to go through my entire seafood with you. That's my plan. It's a little ambitious. This thing is super thick. I don't know if you can see this. It's super thick. It's a big book. It's a big book. But I plan to be around for a while, so... Alright, if y'all want to keep this journey going on with me, let me know. Comment below. If you guys have my Instagram, Wake Dope, Write Dope, Stay Dope, or if you have my Amani Rankin or Amani Jackson Facebook, you can link up with me there. But definitely, I want to talk about this. I want to grow together. I want to have questions answered, and I don't want any of us to be left behind. So my people perish for lack of knowledge, and we're all right here. We should be able to talk to each other and get that understanding. Have a good one.